Good afternoon, everyone. This is Arjun Mishra, and I speak to you from the National Association for the Blind's Employment and Training, an NGO that has been working for the service of people with disabilities for the last 13 years. And as the past viewers of the podcast would know, this series is especially designated towards improvement of accessibility in the digital space and compliance to RPWD Act back in India and on the international standards to W3C and WCAG standards. I have the honor and pleasure of hosting a very special guest for the day. I have the head of accessibility of HSBC Bank, Malintha Fernando, and he would be speaking about how the banking space has been disrupted for the better, for creating of a better and a more accessible future, especially for the people with disabilities. And I would want to hear his ideas over the next duration of the conversation on how Malintha has been, the formidable force behind driving accessibility, both in HSBC and something which we envision across the banking sector. This and also the plans which HSBC has ahead for the space of accessibility is what we would speak about. Malintha, it's such an honor hosting you today. Thank you so much for the time.
Absolute pleasure, Arjun. Great to be here. Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you.
Thank you so much. Before we start, Malintha, walk me through the journey from where you began your accessibility in HSBC and where we have reached in this time span, and how many years has this been? If you could take us through this journey and a little more about your interaction with the space of accessibility. All ears to you.
Of course. Arjun, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm Mali. I head up digital experience and accessibility for HSBC Group Wide, which means in simple terms, guys, I oversee all our websites, apps, transactional platforms across the world, but also our internal systems as well. For those of you who can't see me, I'm an Asian man in my late 30s. I'm wearing a white shirt and a blue blazer. But if you can see me, feel free to tell me I look a lot younger. HSBC's journey is quite an interesting one, Arjun. Look, and we're very open and honest about it. When we started this work about 7 or 8 years ago, digital accessibility was a concept that was completely foreign to the bank. The concept of making a website, an app, a digital product or service or platform, whether for customers or even our own staff, was something that simply didn't exist in the bank. Very honestly speaking, none of our digital offering was accessible.
Okay.
So the bank turned around to me at the time. I was running digital governance and said, "Look, Mali, we need to do something about this." And there was a recognition in the organization that we needed to live our values as an organization. And the beautiful thing about digital accessibility is that it's not one of those things that you can fake. If you, as an organization, have an intent to be accessible and to be inclusive more broadly, you can't make it up. As soon as a disabled user tries to use one of your digital platforms and they're unable to do that, all those commitments to inclusivity do not mean anything. So digital accessibility is one of those things that is very, in some ways, binary. It either works or it doesn't work. So our journey started from a position where there's a recognition that we needed to get this right. And it's been a journey that has gathered momentum. So the first stage of our journey was very simply driving awareness of what digital accessibility was. And then what that involved in the early days, and it's something we do every day today, was bringing in disabled customers and engaging with our digital teams, but also our wider teams, to give them a sense of actually the power of technology to either be a great enabler or a great barrier to access to financial services and products. The second stage of our journey, once we started changing our culture and also driving awareness of this, was making sure that we had the right amount of knowledge, resource, and expertise within HSBC to get this right. So that when we build a website, an app, a digital product or service, accessibility is just business as usual. It's not something special. It's just how it is we do technology. In the same way that, of course, our digital products and services are secure, they meet the local regulations of any sort of specific market that we operate in. Accessibility should just be something that we as an organization do. And today, where we are as an organization is we recognize that actually we've come a long way in a very short time.
Okay.
A very simple ambition, but it's a very bold ambition. It is to be the world's most digitally accessible bank. We want to be the bank of choice for disabled and neurodiverse customers, but we also want to be the employer of choice for disabled and neurodiverse staff. And actually, we benchmarked ourselves against our competition in our 13 most, should we say, strategically important retail markets. And we found that in
Right.
11 out of those 13 markets, that we had the most accessible website. And in the other two, we came second. But perhaps more importantly than being the most accessible bank, in many parts of Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East, we may be the only digitally accessible bank. Which means that actually, if you have a disability and you want to bank online and you want to manage your finances independently, you may not have a choice except for HSBC. It's a responsibility we take very seriously. And with that responsibility, we recognized that we have the ability to make a real difference, not just for our own customers, but our own staff, but also to help other organizations with their own journey around digital accessibility and disability inclusion more broadly. And that's where we are today. And Arjun, I think no doubt we'll speak about some of those initiatives in a few
Absolutely. So, from a user's point of view, tell me, in terms of duration, how many years has it taken for accessibility? And I understand that when you began, as you rightly mentioned, it was not accessible to a point today when you claim, um, you know, almost having being the sole provider or the single provider in many markets. So, how many years has it taken Mali to make this transition?
Of course, very good. Look, I think it's difficult to say. It's taken this amount of time because HSBC is a company that has many offerings. We have a retail offering, we have a commercial banking offering, we have an investment banking offering, and then of course we're going to take care of our own people as well. Over 200,000 employees across 40 countries, and each of those programs has had different levels of maturity. Our retail offering was relatively quick to
Okay.
start getting it right. In a matter of a few years, so to speak. Some of our other functions have taken a little bit longer
Mm.
because look, it's the nature of our geographical spread.
Spread.
I think one of
Yeah.
the things that Arjun we don't talk about quite so much is the impact that we are having on our partners. Now, the
Right.
vast majority of the digital that we offer our customers, particularly, is developed by our own IT and digital teams. We develop it in-house, and
Okay.
then, of course, we offer a platform, a product, or a service to our customers. But it's not uniquely so, right? We, of course, partner with fintechs, other digital providers, big tech, an organization of our size. We work with quite literally a very large variety of people and partners. But our internal systems, the vast majority are provided by third parties, non HSBC entities. So what's really interesting is that while we've been quite quick in terms of getting our own IT and digital teams on site and building that knowledge and expertise, it has of course been a little bit harder to get our partners on site. And one of the things,
Right.
Arjun, that we started doing last year is being very clear with our digital partners. Because if
Okay.
you want to work with us, if you want our business, if you want HSBC to be a customer, it is important that you share our values. Because
Bravo.
ultimately, it might be a fintech's wonderful new app,
Hmm.
but these are our customers and these are our people. And we
Hmm.
choose for our customers and for our people that we will provide technology and digital services that work for everyone. So, it's not been an easy journey. It hasn't been,
Right.
quick at all times. But I think, we made some really quick progress considering the size of our organization. And really now what we're doing is we're supporting our partners, not just by requiring them to be accessible, but
Hmm.
also giving them training, expertise, so that actually they are able to make their products accessible. And of course, we're more than happy for other companies to go ahead and buy those platforms and then benefit downstream from the work that HSBC has done.
So, I think, Malintha, where HSBC made a difference was that it asked and rather demanded cultural alignment by its partners. And once you set that expectations, is when downstream you make those changes. Because truth be told, uh, unless and until it's business driven, many obligations would be would be skipped. And if that happens, unless the industry leader takes a firm uh, step in that direction of, in a way, if I can use that word, enforcing alignment, unless that does not happen, people choose the more convenient option, and that convenience is at a price of having the large mass population denied an opportunity to participate. And I think that's where kudos to HSBC for making that change happen across the value chain. Which leads me to the next part. Mali, help me with this. What, according to you, was the biggest challenge that the banking sector faced? And if you can further, speak about stakeholder-wise, may that be your customers, may that be your partners, of course, you spoke about, but from a customer's level, from your internal employees level, what were the challenges that you faced in this transition with your
Very good.
experience?
Very good, Arjun. I think there are three primary challenges that any organization, HSBC is no different, has to get right in this space. The first is culture. As I say, if you get the hearts and minds right, the ones and zeros will follow, right?
Okay.
And we do a lot around cultural awareness. I think my own team does somewhere in the region of 50 to 75 events every year. There isn't a week that goes by that we aren't having a discussion of this nature. And it's really important that you get the culture right, because actually, if your employees and your suppliers do not understand the importance of why this is required, they might do it unwillingly. You might have to at times force it, which
Yeah.
of course is never how you want to deliver good inclusion practices. The second is the knowledge. When speaking specifically to digital accessibility, but also disability inclusion more broadly, it's a really technical topic. It's not the kind of stuff that's being taught in universities today. If you think about some of the fantastic graduates that come out of universities, whether it's in India or in other parts of Asia or more broadly around the world, they aren't being taught digital accessibility. It is not
Very true.
something that is part of the curriculum of a degree, of a IT degree or a related subject. So actually making sure that our doers, so to speak, have the right knowledge is really important. So we spent a lot of time and effort developing content aimed at our workforce, but also our partners specific to job roles. So we have a course for every developer, designer, tester, product manager. We even have ones for procurement, legal, and compliance, marketing, and comms. Because it's really important that everybody in the digital supply chain, but also our sort of partners who work on wider products and services, are part of producing inclusive services to us. The third is resourcing, right? As with any transformation, it is important that an organization backs up its commitment with actual investment to make this a reality. If we think about today, there are a lot of buzzwords around artificial intelligence. I think, about 18 months ago, we were talking about the metaverse, but all of these things require actual investment. So it's really important that an organization not just says the right things, but as they say, puts their money where their mouth is. So I think those two
Absolutely.
things, culture, the knowledge, and the investment need to be in place for a truly successful accessibility program, but more broadly, a disability inclusion program.
So, amongst the three things, you mentioned about culture, you mentioned about investment, and you mentioned about how stakeholders need to be attuned to. What was the biggest roadblock? Was it the investment, or what do you think is usually, the biggest problem which impedes more spoken and more done in this space? Uh, is it at that higher cost that it sometimes becomes challenging to, get it through the management? What is your experience to this?
Very good, Arjun. I would have to say culture is actually the biggest roadblock, right?
Okay.
If you think about, for the vast majority of people, they don't come across somebody who's disabled or somebody who is visibly disabled in their day-to-day lives.
Right.
So when we bring customers in, quite often we will bring customers or users in with a variety of disabilities, but they see for the first time, they see someone who is blind using an HSBC website, using an app, using our online banking, using our commercial banking products, and doing all of the things that somebody who does not have a disability is able to do. You have that sort of eureka moment. It's like, wow, I didn't even know this is possible.
Absolutely.
I didn't even know that actually somebody who's blind can whip out their phone and buy a product, book a taxi, all that sort of wonderful stuff. It's pretty incredible. So I think, culture is probably the single most important thing that an organization needs to get right. And thereafter, it's just really a question of making sure that you're making a case for good accessibility as well.
So, Mali, I'm maybe circling back to the same question, or rather asking the same thing in a different way. But help me with this. As a company, should accessibility be seen from a point of profit, or should it be seen from a socially good thing to do? How would you potentially see that being sold to a company? Is it that we need to be correct, uh, or should it be seen as a point that we have, so many X number of customers who we could have been a part of the system, but we denied them access? What should be the proposition that should be managed, should be presented to the management?
Very good, Arjun. Very good question. Arjun, I think it's both. I think it's both. There are so many reasons to get this right and to do this. Let's start with the first part of it. Is there a commercial opportunity? Of course there is, right? Over 1.2 billion people around the world identify as being disabled, which is an incredible number. In many of the markets that we operate in, anywhere between 15 to 20% of the population has some form of disability or
Correct.
neurodiverse. It makes commercial sense. Why would you not want to have this group of customers as part of your customer base, right? So you
Absolutely.
absolutely want to get this right. I was speaking to a customer a few weeks ago who got a mortgage with the bank, and he's completely blind. And he said, "Look, Marty, I was able to do that completely independently. I was able to buy a new house, and it just so happened that HSBC also had the best mortgage rate for that specific customer. Wonderful. It's fully accessible, and from a banking perspective, he found our rate to be the right one for him. Wonderful, right? And of course, we'd love to have him as a customer. But of course, there's more to it. Yes, of course, it's a social. Organizations can have a social impact. If you think about organizations today, they serve many communities across the world, and I think it's really important that organizations aren't simply looking at their bottom line in terms of their profitability, but they're also considering what it is they can do to make a real difference. And I think organizations like HSBC that operate across many countries and many parts of the world have a real obligation to not just think about its profitability, but actually make a contribution to the societies that they serve. Now, here in the UK, for example, nearly 20% of our workforce self-identified as having some form of disability. And across the group, 8% of our workforce self-identified as having a disability. So this is something that really means a lot to our people. This is
Right.
personal. This is about, either yourself as an individual or a friend, a family member. So this is something that really means a lot to our people. And of course, as organizations consider how it is they are perceived today, it's really important that issues like disability inclusion or the broader diversity and inclusion agenda is something that they get right. Because of course, organizations aren't just being judged on their profit, but of
Right.
course how it is they operate as citizens of the world today.
Absolutely. And even that, I think, in a way influences your customer's decision to whether or not participating with you. Because the new age customers also, are conscious or are interested to understand beyond business. How does the brand engage with the larger audience? That is also a defining factor on whether or not, I was watching this campaign recently, and it mentioned about we buy if you also do so and so and so and so and so and so, and how's the brand engage beyond business with the rest of the stakeholders, is something which also becomes one of the defining factors of how the new age customers engages or decides not to engage with the brand.
Of
So
course.
so, I mean, that's something which goes beyond profits, and that's something which is seemingly very intangible, but is actually quite a big influencer on how it can be improved. Of course, there aren't many matrices to it, which can define how the brand is perceived. But I see that as something which is quite important for a brand to look into,
Absolutely.
in the larger space.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Mali, I remember of this interaction, you were speaking about how HSBC has been making strides beyond its own organization to make accessibility more commonplace. And you mentioned about a program where potentially HSBC is looking at training accessibility testers and preparing them for the for other businesses to improve their accessibility standards. You mentioned about how this program has started in London, and you had plans about it across the world. Selfishly, I would want to know the Indian context also of it, but all years to the program and what has been the you know what has been the progress till now, and what are your future plans to it?
Of course, wonderful. Look, we got, as an organization, we recognize that we are in a position to be able to invest in this space in a way that other organizations may not be able to do or choose not to do. And
Okay.
it's a responsibility we take really seriously. So there's three things that I'd like to kind of talk about. The first is something we launched last week. I'm super excited about it. We launched an apprenticeship program specifically for disabled and neurodiverse apprentices. They're going to go through a formal program, sitting with some of the best professionals anywhere in the world in this space, both within my team but also externally. And at the end of it, they get a formal qualification. And should they choose, each of them will be given a full-time job opportunity within HSBC. It's a program that we're looking to start replicating in other parts of the world. So watch this space. We're really excited. We've got a lot of interest and excitement from Asia in particular. So it's something we've started here as a pilot in the UK, but we're gonna bring it to Asia as well next year. So I'm super excited by the program. The second, this is a direct offer to anybody watching this call. We've made a commitment to train 1,000 people in digital accessibility outside of HSBC. And as I mentioned, we have a course for every type of digital professional, but also for marketeers, for content writers. And if there's anybody watching this call, part of an organization, we'd love to share our knowledge with you. Just drop me a line, reach out to me on LinkedIn. And please, we'd love to train up the organization. There's no cost to that. We're not asking for anything in return. We're not asking for any publicity. We're not asking for a LinkedIn post. All we want is to share our knowledge. We are by no means perfect, but we want to develop and give away the expertise that we give our own people. We're opening up to the whole world. The third thing, which we hope to release later this year, is something called the Accessibility Hub. So the Accessibility Hub is something quite interesting. What we realized is, look, how do we drive awareness about this topic at scale across 40 countries? That's not something that's easy to do. So we developed the Digital Accessibility Hub. It follows the course of the story of a woman called Rachel as she goes through the process of online dating, but she has MS. And all of the sort of ups and downs of what that involves. It's something we released to our own staff last year. It's won multiple awards, both local as well as international awards. And late this year, we're going to give it to the whole world for free. So if you'd like to understand more about what digital accessibility is, the power of technology, go visit the HSBC Accessibility Hub. You don't have to be a technologist to follow it. There's a little bit of gamification in there as well, so you can kind of start playing around with some of the technology involved. But if you want the hard knowledge and you want the technical expertise and you want to develop that within your own organization, it's an open offer. We're training a number of organizations across the world already, a number of partners in Asia that have come out and have signed up for this. We'd love to have more firms in India come along and get trained also.
Wonderful. Such heartening initiatives. Great work you're doing there. And I think post this podcast, you would be getting a lot of requests from the audience, because eventually I think people have the intent. It is just that they aren't aware of the process. And if you can simplify it, I think that would ease the adoption process, and there would be greater interest. uh, because we generally believe that uh, the heart's at the right place. It's just that nobody knows the way ahead. And that's something which, kudos to HSBC for being not only the industry leader, but also setting the path and helping others in their implementation and adoption journey. So superb. Thank you, Mali, for this, and thank you for the HSBC Bank for setting this in process. And Mali, help me understand this. That we rightly mentioned about how the developers who join the organizations, especially may that be engineers or people from marketing or wheresoever, and this is a problem which I've also experienced here in India. We do not, at an early age, get to interact with people with disabilities. May that be in our schools, may that be during our graduation or the higher studies. So what happens is, because of the lack of sensitization, we lack the knowledge of what is it that they require for them to be able to work, uh, or be able to lead a life as without barriers like we do. So when you spoke about these sensitization sessions, which is undergone compulsory, as I understand, by every new employee, what are those steps in sensitization that you take up for your employees? Say I'm a new joinee in HSBC. What are those steps that you take in order to get them understanding the culture, and what are those challenges you face in implementing of those steps?
Very good, very good, very good. And so, one of the things, simple things that we're doing in the new year is building this into our compulsory training, right? So every employee across the world will be spoken to about three broad topics. What is disability and disability inclusion, and why is this important? What is neurodiversity? What is neurodiversity inclusion, and why is it important? And then third, if you're a people manager, what is your role in
Hmm.
creating the appropriate environment for somebody who's disabled or neurodiverse to succeed? So that's something that every employee is going to be required to do in the near future. But there's so much more that we do in this space. So, I've spoken a little bit about some of the events that my team runs. We also have a fantastic internal ability network that exists across the world, with each country having their own ability network. And they run a number of initiatives, which is whether it's with local NGOs or their own staff who are disabled or neurodiverse, so that actually our able-bodied community can just interact with them and just go, oh, you know what, actually, somebody who's disabled can have the same career path, has the same career ambitions, has the same personal ambitions as somebody who's not disabled.
Right.
And why not? So how do we create that
Absolutely.
culture? So I think the good thing, Arjun, is I'm very fortunate in the fact that the organization has a number of layers around this, whether it's my own team, our leadership, to our ability networks, to just people who go, look, actually, this is something that needs to happen. It's a very deliberate process of making sure that all our employees share the values that we as an organization put forward. And that's really difficult to do sometimes, right? We operate across 40 countries. Every country in the world doesn't have the same view of, shall we say, disability inclusion.
Right.
Some countries are, shall we say, more mature in their understanding of disability inclusion, and some countries it's still very much a topic that may not be spoken about. But what we
Right.
want to make sure is that all of our employees, irrespective of whether they work in India or work in London, they all recognize the importance of what we're trying to do. They are exposed to the reasons for why this is important, and then depending on their job role, they're provided with the skills to practically do what it is they have to do in their jobs day to day, such that they are all facilitating an inclusive environment for somebody who's disabled, whether it's a customer or a staff member. And I think it's one of those things, Arjun. It's I don't think you can ever say the job is done. It is a
Right.
continuous process, and it's something we will continue to do. I don't think there will ever be a point where we will turn around and go, the job is done here. We don't need to do
Mhm.
anymore. It's just something that we're
Right.
going to constantly continue to do. It's just going to be part of our DNA on an ongoing basis.
Uh, Mali, help me understand this. That what are the ways in which you're calibrating? or measuring the progress which is happening in this space? Because I understand their practices, and I understand that they are implemented across organizations, customized to markets, but implemented across. But how do you go about measuring or calibrating on what has been the progress? Is it a basis customer interaction? Is it the basis when you have this diverse set of population, you ask them for the feedback? Because measurement is as important as setting policies and principles in place. You need to have a dipstick to keep checking regularly and how much or how far are we from where we want to be. So what are those steps which you have implemented across in HSBC?
Of course, really good question. Really good question. So, and again, I speak in three, so I'll speak to three things that we do in terms of measurement. The first is, an external audit for all of our digital, right? So all of our digital by bank policy is required to, if it's a significant change, that's something new or changing something that already exists, we require an external audit. Now, there's a lot of great work that happens internally, whether it's our own internal design, QA, development teams, my own teams validate this, but we require that because actually we want to know independently, hand on heart,
Yeah.
that what we are releasing to our customers is accessible. And that's really important. So that's the first one that we require and mandate. The second, as you've rightly spoken to, is there's no substitute to speaking to the end user. So
Yeah.
one of the things that we do is we constantly test our products, whether it's for customers or our staff, with the end user. It's a variety of customers, non-customers, staff, to go, actually, does this work? And we make sure that all major disabilities are represented. So we don't just have the blind, we have, we have visually impaired users across the entire spectrum, from low vision to blindness, to wheelchair users, to older customers, to neurodiverse users. We make sure that all major disabled and neurodiverse groups are represented, whether it's a customer-facing product or a staff product. It's great to hear what they like about a specific product, but more importantly, what we need to do better. And what we do is we take that feedback, we put it into our product backlogs, and we're constantly improving and iterating. So customer research and those discussions are vital, because not only do we want to be compliant, we want to provide a best-in-class experience, because that's what everybody wants, right? They want a great experience. They don't want something that just works. The third thing we do is we're constantly looking at our competitors, right? We want to know, how are we doing against the competition? So we work again with specialists in this space to understand, actually, look, how are we doing in India? How are we doing in Hong Kong? How are we doing in China? How are we doing in London? How does our offering compare with that of our competition? What is our competition doing well that we can learn from? But also, what are we doing well, and so on and so forth. So measurement's really important. We take it really seriously. It's something that I report back to the board on a very regular basis. And ultimately, what our customers and what our staff say is perhaps the most important feedback that we get in terms of measuring progress and how well we're doing.
Awesome. No, I think that is, I believe, the most important link, because validation and measurement, is as important as policies and steps taken, because that gets the sounding board in place on how well or how far are we. So, Mani, on to the next question. What is the future of digital accessibility that you foresee, and how can we make accessibility more affordable for the masses? There are, of course, a huge set of countries which can afford, but there are still the significant others who do not have access to such resources. So, what's the solution that you see as an expert in this space to make affordability ring into this?
Very good question. So look, I think part of it's technology based, part of it is people based, as with all things. So I'll start with the technology. What we're starting to see is the prevalence of a greater amount of automation in this space, right? The delivery of automation tools and the use of artificial intelligence to make the delivery of digital accessibility simpler, faster, cheaper. And I think that's only going to get better, and it's only going to improve, right? As the capabilities within artificial intelligence and automation improve. So that's an obvious way that organizations can look to reduce the cost of delivering accessible products. The second is diversifying your workforce. If you have more disabled and neurodiverse employees as part of your workforce, one of the things that you will notice is that actually accessibility isn't one of those things that gets done right at the end. It becomes just part of your business. And I think that's really important, right? Because quite often what organizations do is they will think about accessibility very late in the day, and you're trying to bolt accessibility into a product that was never designed to be accessible. All of a sudden, that is a very expensive endeavor. So actually, as organizations start taking this more seriously from a people perspective and diversifying their own workforce, you will have more people going, well, this product's great, but it doesn't work for me. And that's a problem. The third thing I think that we're starting to see is also the availability of expertise outside of the UK and the US. So I think the UK and US used to be centers of excellence in digital accessibility. The US in particular has had rather stringent accessibility regulation in place for a number of years, the UK since 2009. But what I'm starting to see are places like India in particular are local accessibility organizations with expertise in a way that didn't exist even 12 to 24 months ago. So actually, as you start having expertise locally, the cost of seeking out that expertise becomes that much cheaper because you have a local provider that operates in your time zone, that speaks your language, that understands your culture, and any sort of specific nuances in a specific country or market. So those are some of the changes. There's a lot more I think that we can speak to. But I think those are probably the immediate things that are going to help reduce the cost of accessibility in the next 2 to 3 years.
Awesome. With that, I would have had a lot more questions to ask you, Mali, but I understand the limitation in time. And I also understand that you would have other engagements to look into. But I would want to end this interaction with a promise from you to have greater interest towards ensuring accessibility for India and in the initiatives of, as you head HSBC's, accessibility hub. I would look forward for great interaction and in ways in which we can make it more accessible for the audience here. There's a huge set of customers who would request this, and I know I go back with the hope that you're hearing them as we speak, and you would try and make ways in which, of course, beyond the point which you've already mentioned about how there could be organizations in India who might have an interest in accessibility, and you've been very grateful in offering this opportunity for them to learn from your practices. But I go back happier because I feel there's a lot done, and it's a very promising future, given the strides made by organizations of your scale for a greater and more accessible future for the people with disabilities. And that's where I think I leave it to you for having the closing comments on what you think on this subject.
Of course, Arjun. And look, Arjun, as we speak, I'm setting up an accessibility team in India. I'm really excited about the talent that we're going to find. I know there's some great people doing some great work in India. So, if this is something you'd like to do and you have the expertise and the experience, please drop me a line. We want the best talent in the market, right? To come join our journey as we try to change not just the lives of our customers and our own people, but really use our size and brand to make a real difference in the communities that we serve. We're really proud of our digital offering in India, our benchmarking and speaking to customers. We feel fairly confident that we're doing very well from an accessibility perspective. And of course, we will continue to do more. India is such a of strategic importance. So we will only continue to do more in India. And expect to see me there in the very near future. I look forward to meeting in person, and I'd love to meet some of your colleagues and contacts as well to understand what we can do to help them, whether it's more training, sharing our expertise, or anything else that we can be a service of.
Awesome. That's very heartening, and I look forward to host you whenever you're here. Give me the privilege for doing that. Thank you so much. It was such a great interaction, Mali. And look forward for more times when I could speak to you and also meet you in person if possible. And thank you for the afternoon. It was a great interaction, and I think my audience and I learned a lot from what you spoke.
Absolutely my pleasure, Arjun. Thank you so much again for the opportunity.
Right. Take care. Thank you so much for your time. Bye, Mali.
Bye.